Inner Voice, a heartfelt chat with Dr. Foojan.
Break free from the forces holding you back. Get the life you deserve. Eliminate stress, reduce anxiety, decrease depression, and start living your full potential. Thousands have used Dr. Foojan Zeine's awareness integration theory, an evidence-based behavioral health breakthrough with incredible life-changing results. Getting rid of past trauma, having fulfilling relationships, increasing earnings, and living their best life. Now, the Foojan app is available to everyone. The app is Dr. Foojan Zeine's awareness integration theory in the palm of your hand. Download the Foojan app today.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the Inner Voice podcast, a heartfelt chat with my guests and you beautiful listeners and viewers. I'm Dr. Foojan Zeine. I'm a psychotherapist and author and the originator of the awareness integration theory. And if you want to know more about the awareness integration theory, go to awarenessintegration.com and you'll get to know all of it, all the courses, all the books, everything that you wanted to ever know about that. And I'd love to talk to you about it if you wanted to get to know more. If you're a therapist, if you're a coach, you want to be certified, we have seminars that are consistently across the year that we certify, and you could be a part of the Foojan.com app as the provider. And if you're someone who just likes to experience it as a client, then you can call me or any of the providers who offer that type, or even groups that you could share. So I'd love to hear from you on that. In this episode, I am so excited. I chatted with Michelle Madrid. She's the author of Let Us Be Greater, a gentle guided path to healing for adoptees, and a host of the Electricity of You podcast. She's an international adoptee, former foster child in the UK, and an adoptee empowerment life coach who has been recognized as an Angels in Adoption, an honorary by the Congressional Coalition on Adoption Institute, and induced into the New Mexico Women's Hall of Fame for her work in adoption. You can definitely visit her at themichellemadrid.com. We had an amazing heart-to-heart conversation together about her journey, about a journey that she went through when she was adopted, about a journey of adopting a little girl from Nigeria, Ethiopia. And it was more like this essence of what we go through when this is all happens, the dualities, the conflicts, the loss, the gain, the beauty, the appreciation, and all of it, knowing that we are all great with minor flaws. And that was the beauty of our conversation. I really enjoyed this conversation. I know that you will as much as I did. So don't go anywhere. Michelle's going to be right here. But before that, subscribe to my podcast, to this podcast. Give a review, 4 or 5, anything that you feel like it's really there. If you enjoyed it, put it out there, put your review. Connect with my YouTube channel. Everything I do is going to be there. So if you connect to it and you subscribe to it, regardless of whether it's this or any other show that I do, that it's going to be on there. Connect with me through my website, foojanzeine.com, any of the social medias, Dr. Foojan Zeine. If you want to experience the awareness integration path through an app, go to Foojan app. You can find it in Google Store or Apple, all of it. It's yours, all right? And share with me your thoughts. I love to hear from you. We'd love to work together in all of it. So without further ado, here's Michelle Madrid.
Eliminate stress, reduce anxiety, and decrease depression. Dr. Foojan Zeine's awareness integration theory has helped thousands like you get incredible life-changing results. The Foojan app gives you her evidence-based treatment in the palm of your hand. Download today.
Michelle Madrid, so nice to have you on the show. Thank you for coming all the way from Florida, actually.
Exactly. I'm in Miami today, and I'm so happy to be here with you. Thank you so much. I'm honored.
So let us talk about being greater, which is the name of your book, Let Us Be Greater. It's a gentle guided path to healing for adoptees. So this book is dear to you. The name is dear to you. It has a lot of meaning for you. So share with us What was it about now that you want to share this with the rest of the world?
I do believe that this book, Let Us Be Greater, has been a book I've been writing all of my life. You know, as someone who is in foster care in the United Kingdom, adopted by Americans, and who has lived in the skin of adoption as an international adoptee. This book is sort of a culmination for me, really, of lived experience and the experience of healing and coming back to self and a sense of wholeness, claiming identity, reuniting with myself on the deepest levels. And, you know, often when we learn these things, I often say you can't give to others what you have yet to receive or given to yourself. And so I've given myself many years of healing, and I think the walk of deep, deep understanding of what it does mean to come home to yourself as an adoptee, and claiming parts of ourselves that can seem sort of lost or we can feel disconnected to along the experience of removal, relinquishment, abandonment, you know, sense of rejection in our lives. And so this book came about at a time, I think, where I was ready to share not only my journey, along with the journey of others, some other adult adoptees I coach, but also, you know, ways back to yourself when you feel that sense of disconnection that can go so very deep. And the name of the book is rooted in my journey traveling to Ethiopia to adopt my now 14-year-old daughter. It is a story that I include in the book of holding my little girl at the time she was 10 months old. This goes back to 2010. And I held her in my arms for the very first time. And I learned the meaning of her Ethiopian name, Tiblet. When I asked of the translation, the orphanage director told me it means let her be greater. And she was given this name by the stranger who found her, actually a police officer who found her as a little tiny one. And it carried with it to me such a profound power of, you know, let this child be greater than her circumstances. Let her go first. Let her advance beyond the struggle. And as I held her in my arms in that moment, I recognized something within myself that I was still struggling with. I saw very clearly all the potential, all the worth that my little daughter held. I could see it like in an instant. And I think scenes of her life and her future were sort of flashing before me. Yet I had this distinct awareness in that moment that I couldn't see the same thing in myself. I was still struggling with just a sense of lacking worth. I struggled with loving myself, seeing myself as worthy in the world, really seeing myself in that way. And I knew that I still had to do work to really step into that identity of greatness and the greater version of who I'm here to be. And so that's really started, I think, the next level of healing for me. It was really going deep and understanding so many parts of myself that were still rooted in a place of feeling like I lacked that sense of worth. I brought my daughter home to the US. She was diagnosed with failure to thrive, in that she was malnourished and she was struggling with giardia. And I saw that, you know, that diagnosis I'd given myself of failure to thrive. I just saw myself as failing in so many aspects of my life that I so deeply desired to connect really deeply in relationships, to love myself, to see myself as someone with immense value and promise. And I just knew I had still work to do. And that really started me on the path of, I think, deeper discovery. It brings me to where I am today and the book that I've written in this moment.
Beautiful. You touched upon so many angles of this. I used to work with Bienvenidos in California, which is a foster care agency, for many years, training foster parents and working with biological parents who wanted to, you know, work on themselves and then work with many of the foster parents who adopted the children after years of, you know, being with them. And even people who were adopted and then have to go back, and the pain and all of that. And you say beautifully in your book that, I know when we talk about adoption, a lot of times we look at the glory and someone has been saved and all of it, but we rarely really look at all the pain around it, not only for the person who's been adopted. And I know that in some instances, age of being adopted really, really matters. But same thing you were just sharing, even as young, very, very young, you could still subconsciously you experience the rejection. Sometimes they've been the rejection that you're experiencing because of the pain of the mother, who they know they can't hold this baby, and they're mourning, they're already grieving the child that they need to give up, knowing that that has to happen, and that becomes part of the circuitry of the little person who is getting raised in that womb, and then coming and then having to be given away to strangers which they don't know. So there's so many levels of this factor of whether they know it or not, they know it consciously or not, and then whether there's a reason where they would want to go back and find out, and all of the meaning that they assign to themselves. Someone who is, thinking that somebody brought me into this world, and, for whatever the circumstances were, I'm no longer with them. And the meaning that a human being assigns to that. And as you said beautifully, like, I decided thriving was not part of it. Maybe your daughter didn't decide herself because of the malnutrition, but sometimes even when the malnutrition isn't there, there is a subconscious decision there that I'm not worthy and I should not thrive. Like, if somebody didn't want me, then I should not want me. I'm unwanted. And we assign so many meanings to ourselves in that way of stopping yourself to move forward. So it is so beautiful to hear that you're going through that process and really, really healing yourself.
Thank you so much. You touch on so many important points there, because I do believe that, a lot of the sense of rejection can begin in the womb. What our mothers experience in the world, we experience in the womb. I really believe that. And in my own healing work, I've really come to hold a very tender place for that little girl, the little girl I was, because I do believe she experienced so much of what my first mom, her first mom, our first mom experienced while she, moved through the very real, raw decision of whether she would carry me to term, whether she would keep me, all of those things that she was struggling with. I too struggled. I sensed, we have a concept sometimes that it's mother, when you're in the womb, it's mother and child, but so much of science says and is proving that it is mother-child. We are one when we're in the womb, and we experience what our moms experience. So I do believe there's something there that we can enter the world with a sense of programming that perhaps we're just not fully welcome in this life that we've been given. I know that shortly after I was born and then placed into foster care, I lost a significant amount of weight. And the doctors said there was nothing wrong with my name before I was adopted was Julia Dawn. Nothing was wrong with Julia Dawn. But I look back, and in my own meditations and explorations, internal wanderings, if you will, I look back and see that, everything was wrong in that moment. I was a child who knew on a cellular level that she was losing her mom. And that impacted me greatly. And so there was, I do believe, before I could even speak, there was a sense of not being worthy of somehow staying with my mom. Somehow I remember as a little girl asking myself in the dark of night, what did I do? I don't know what I did. And it wasn't that I didn't love my adoptive family. No family is perfect. Certainly my adoptive family had their own struggles. I write about that in the book. But I still, even with the love in my adoptive family, I still struggled with this deep, 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 deep fear that rejection was looming all the time around me. And that if I wasn't a perfect little girl, I could be sent back somewhere. I didn't know where, but that someone might come and get me if I didn't prove my worth each and every day. And so I lived with these beliefs that I had to be perfect, I had to prove my worth. But deep, deep down inside, no matter what I did, the best grades, um, pleasing my adoptive mother, I still felt this sense of innate unworthiness that I really had to get to. I really believe if something keeps coming up for you, like I just don't feel worthy, then I need to really look at that limiting belief. I call it a logo of limitation. I need to look at it tenderly and with compassion and figure that out. Why do I feel this deep sense of unworthiness in my life? And how do I get back to a place of stepping into the truth of the matter that I am worthy, that I am welcome into the fullness of living, into the fullness of my life, and that I am here, I have breath, I have purpose, I have a unique purpose, and stepping into those things. And in the book, I outline 8 points of pain that adoptees often face, maybe one of them, maybe all of them, maybe something in between, but looking at those points of pain and doing the work of transforming those things into our points of light so we can step into the fullness and the promise of who we are and move forward as people who really feel connected to a place of self-love, self-worth, and all the possibilities that we are here to live out in our lives.
It's such a dynamic, it's a complicated dynamic. And I know that there is this pain that people might not necessarily associate it. And then so it's important for that association and then be able to go in and look at it. There's also this kind of a guilt, weird feeling that happens between, like, okay, I've been given this opportunity, or this is what's going on, or all of that. And, having to go acknowledge the pain of the loss that we have sometimes becomes an issue, as if with, my adoptive family, and thinking like I'm not appreciated. But most of the children, it's not about whether they appreciate or not. The appreciation is there, like any parental, dynamic, whether it's a biological or an adoptive. I think that, when you're giving something, you either enjoy it or you don't. But there's also this other underlying factor that is there, that is always a wonder. When it is your biological parent, you like it, you don't, you fight, you say I hate you to your mom sometimes, and you say I love you, and it comes back. And so I think part of that dynamic is always just there regardless. But there's this other dynamic that is always kind of looming, which adoptive parent might always say, is this because we're not biological? Like, is it because, my child who's here has a different parent, or they had different certain, let's say, genetic background and stuff? Or is it that I'm having this feeling because I'm pissed at my child? Is it because it's not my biological? So that kind of, no, you could get pissed at your own child, you too. Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So, but there's always this like wonder in the middle. And I think that for an adoptee who also knows that they are adopted, there's always this wonder. What happened? How come, what happened to my biological parent? Why is it that they didn't want me, or couldn't handle me, or didn't thrive to do this, or didn't fight for me, and all of it? That is part of always this kind of curiosity, which that you beautifully put it into those 8 points of pain. Can you share a little bit about that and the 8 points of pain?
Absolutely. The points of pain that I outline in the book are the pain of feeling unwelcome in the world, just entering the world with a sense of not quite being fully welcome into your own life, into the life that you've been given. That can cause us as adoptees to sort of live on the margins, at arm's length in relationships, and not really fully stepping into the promise, the fullest promise of all that we're here to be. The pain of a sense of just broken bonds, and that deep sense of loss that we need to get to, that so often we bury so deep as adoptees. And maybe we do feel a sense of guilt. Why am I feeling this way? When the wider narrative is, I should just be grateful and I should just move on. And, how lucky you are that this family took you in, but yet you feel this deep sense of loss. And there's sort of that feeling of tug of war of, oh, I want to get to those feelings, but I'm afraid if I do, I'll be seen as ungrateful. And that's really not the place that I stand. I am very grateful for my life, but I also am grieving a loss that I really want to understand. The pain of being denied access to truth. So often as adoptees, we live feeling removed from a truth, whether that's a truth within ourselves or the truth of our medical history, the truth of our biological family history. We live with this feeling of being locked out of truth, and it can be a very challenging place to be. The pain of just familial rejection, words that harm. Oftentimes we can be told, as you've probably heard before, adoption is, this wonderful option. It's you're chosen. But oftentimes for adoptees, it can feel like, but I'm chosen, but I feel like second choice. Perhaps my parents struggled with infertility or what have you, and then they came to the decision to adopt. So that can be a real pain point that looms, pain of distrust. If my first parents left, then who can I really trust in this world? That sense of banished biology, being removed from the truth of the biology that maybe we feel pulsing within our veins, but we really can't get at. The pain of pleasing others versus pleasing self. I have to be someone other than my authentic self in order to stay safe from another rejection. I struggled with that one for a very long time in my life. And I just think overall, the eighth pain point is that lack of transparency and that feeling of really acceptance, self-acceptance, and acceptance by those around us for who we are authentically as adoptees. And there is certainly, without a doubt, a sense of guilt that we can feel. And you touched on that as adoptees for, if I really try to explore these feelings I'm having, if I'm struggling in some way and I reach out to my adoptive parents about it, will I be seen as ungrateful? Will I hurt them? Will I lose their love? And the fact of the matter is, it is about that transparency. It's about that beautiful veil, thin veil that we can move back and forth through, right? Where it doesn't have to be so either or. We really, as adoptees, want to live in the both and, where we can love and we can grieve. And we know that we are safe in the doing of that. And I think for anyone who has adopted a child, or who is considering adopting, just understand that they come into their new surroundings not as blank slates, whatever their earliest story may look like. They come into your family with that history, and it's best served to build that solid family foundation and to have a beautiful, loving relationship with your child, to be willing to lean in and understand what they may be feeling, because they may be grieving a loss that you may not quite understand, but your willingness to understand, your willingness to say, I know your loss is real. How can I help you? How can I support you? Is such a powerful healing balm and a beautiful step forward to forging those kind of bonds that you want to have with your child. And also as an adoptee, the kind of bonds and love you want to have for yourself. You can ask yourself the same question. You can look in the mirror and say, I know that your loss is real. How can I help you? What do you need from me in order to trust me more? We can do that with ourselves as adoptees as well. And I think all of those quality questions really can help to lead us forward, at least put a solid first step onto the path of healing.
Yes. As you were sharing, this came up for me about, you kept saying I'm an international adoptee, and you also have chosen to adopt from another country. What do you think the difference is? Like, what is the reason where some people go more toward an international adoption versus a local adoption? And what do you think the differences would be depending on what country you are choosing to adopt a child from?
Well, certainly adoption looks different country to country. But I would say, as an international adoptee myself, that I came to adopting internationally in a very organic way. I had my eldest son is biological, And adoption, came to me, building our family through adoption with my son who's now 19 and my daughter who's 14. It really did come organically, and I was very open to leaning in when I started receiving signs. Like I would receive signs, people talking about maybe Ethiopia or what have you, and I would just sit in stillness and I would ask, is this where I'm supposed to move forward in bringing a child into our family and expanding our family in that way. I certainly never went about adoption in a way of looking at it like I'm here to save a child, because I am not a savior. But I do know that what I offer my children is an understanding that is invaluable. And they say that to me often, Mom, you really understand where I'm coming from. And I do, and I want those lines of communication to be very open, and I want them to know they can come to me and share anything with me. I think it's very important to understand with international adoption, the layers of loss there can be more layers of loss. I think we lose our country of origin. Oftentimes we lose a sense of culture, original culture. We might lose language, our first language. And I think it's so important, it has been for me as an adoptee and also as an adoptive parent of 2 internationally adopted children, the understanding that allowing them to connect with their culture, understanding that we are a multicultural family, and their first families, although we don't know a lot about their first families yet, they are part of our family. My children, since they were tiny, have talked about first parents, and they've asked questions, and they know that we love them. We love those parents, because without them, we would not have our children. And so there's a great sense of love, I hope, that they always experience within our family, and an acceptance of the fact that our family grew not with just adopting these 2 beautiful kids, but also with adopting in the love and the energy and the ancestral cultural lines of their families. And I think that's really important, so that a child doesn't feel so completely disconnected from what is, I like to say, pulsing through their veins, the biology of who they are, which is so powerful. And I think it's personal preference. I think you really have to look, if you're considering about adopting, as what pathway to adoption feels best, not only for yourself, but ultimately for the child. Are you open to adopting outside of your culture, outside of your race? What work will you be willing to do to make sure that your children are always connected to and rooted in a first culture, their race, and allow them to be proud of who they are and to live that truth authentically? Those are things I would just suggest. And understanding is really important for families. We are a shared family as an adoptive family, whether we are living within open adoption or more closed adoption. It's so important, no matter what the structure of the adoption looks like, to allow it to be surrounded by an energy of sharing their culture, sharing their biology, sharing all of the unique things that make them who they are, and celebrating that, so they don't feel like they have to hide it, or they don't feel like it's something that is to be ashamed of. No, all that they are, every cell of their being, must be celebrated. And adoptees feel that. They feel that. And it's just, when they don't get that, it's just another little sense of rejection, and another way they sort of retreat back into themselves. We can help them step into the light of who they are, not live their life in the shadows, by embracing authentically, everything that they are and all that they have been brought into this world to be and to do.
Brought something to my attention, which was very interesting. You said that this concept of loving their biological parent, and since I got introduced to adoptees through obviously a lot of the pain of whether there were abusive parents or parents who were dealing with the, addiction. And that's why the children were taken away. There was always this culture of, kind of like being upset with the biological parent. Like the system was upset. The new adoptive, the foster care, the adoptive parents were like upset. So they kept looking at the biological parents as like bad parents, and that's why the kids were taken away in a sense. Or even if it was a person who chose to let go and put their children for adoption, they were looked upon as a negative. But the other side of it, as you were sharing, is when the child experiences that their biological parents are bad, they own the badness also, because they feel like I am part of that group. So if they're bad, then I'm bad. And there's this shame that consistently just lives with you, coming from like a bad seed, like a bad apple. And then therefore you are also. And that also becomes this divide within the self, and consistently getting that message somehow from the outside world that group are bad and the adoptive parents are good. And inside of you, I think it becomes this type of a split that you also have to be able to heal versus, owning. And, we all have this. No, it doesn't matter who says what. What we say about our own parents, but if somebody else says something about our parents or our siblings or people who are kind of like thinking they're either our bloodline or they're ours, then we take it very personal, and it becomes big. They are part of who we are. So if you portray them as not good or not enough or bad, then that kind of relays on me. So that is part of, again, the pain points and how to be aware of that. And it's so beautiful when you said, regardless of the circumstances, I'm grateful that they brought you into this world and I get to be with you. And I think that's part of the message that it could also heal the person who, has been taken away from their bloodline in a sense and had to deal with this. Everyone, let us be greater. A gentle, guided path to healing for adoptees by Michelle Madrid. Michelle, you also talk about like programs that can support like perinatal, and if someone really does know that they're not in a circumstance to be able to take care of their children, what is it that they can do as someone who takes care of the child, or take care of their body, and what could other people or systems do to be able to facilitate this process a little bit better?
Oh, it's such an important question. And so much of what you just said resonates with me so deeply. I just want to touch on what you were saying about, the words that we use. I grew up understanding from everyone around me, my adoptive parents as well, that my first mom had an affair with my bio father, my first father. And I was placed into foster care. I was labeled as difficult to place, illegitimate, unwanted. All of these things are in my foster records. And I really believed that my first parents were bad somehow. And so then I must be bad too. And I lived with that for such a long time. I didn't know how to process it, but it would never leave me, that label of just somehow being broken. And inside of my adoptive family, I had an adoptive father who struggled with alcohol addiction. And it was very painful inside of that home. There was verbal abuse, and it was emotionally very hard. And I remember thinking as a child, I am told that my first parents are bad. I must be bad. It must be the reason that my adoptive father drinks. So I must be so bad that he has to drink in order to deal with me. And I remember thinking, I don't know where you go to talk about when everyone's telling me how bad my first parents were, how broken they were. Where do you go to talk about the fact that inside of your adoptive home feels broken too? Is I had a father who was struggling with something very real. And I didn't know where to go to express this sense of just brokenness all around me. And I think we serve adoptees in a much more kind and loving way when we share with them that their bio parents, and I know this can be hard for adoptive parents sometimes to wrap their heads around, but the bio parents, if you can just lean into this, as I tell my children, I don't know all the reasons why your parents chose to relinquish, like my parents chose to relinquish me. I don't know what happened in that moment of decision. But what I know is they are real people who were going through a real struggle. And like you and me, they are love. I believe each and every one of us is love, but oh my golly, we go through struggles and challenges and brokenness in this life. They made a decision in that moment, or perhaps someone else had to come in and make that decision for them. But it has nothing to do with you, sweet, precious child, sweet, precious adoptee. And I say this to adoptees, whether they are 7 or 7D. Those circumstances and decisions do not define your innate goodness, the love that you're here to give, the love that you are, and everything you are uniquely qualified to do in this life. And so we, I think, can consider the fact that offering and showing up from this place of love, from this place of forgiveness, and forgiveness is powerful. We're going to help our adoptees not see themselves as somehow tainted in a way that breaks them for the rest of their lives, but understand that they were innocent ones who were part of a moment that there was a decision that was made that caused a shift in their life, but they were not the cause of that shift. If that clarifies for you, always surrounding this with love, not sugarcoating it. That's not what I'm saying, because we have to have real, open, honest, raw conversation about this adoptee experience. But love is what we all are. And I look back at my first parents and what I've learned of them. I reunited with my first mother when I was a teen. I learned a lot about my first father, more about my first father as an adult. They were not bad people. They were real people in a really difficult circumstance, and they made a decision. It doesn't mean that they didn't have love for me. It just meant that the moment they were in caused them to, and the circumstance they were in caused them to make a decision that, yes, impacted me greatly, but it doesn't mean that I was bad. And it certainly doesn't mean that they were bad. And when I learned more of my first parents' circumstances, what I saw them as real people who were flawed, just like me. And that was the most freeing moment, the most liberating moment in my life. I hadn't done anything wrong. I hadn't done anything wrong. I was just like my first mom and my first dad. I am real. I am flawed. I am human. And I can carry that forward,
And
that
I'm
knowledge.
great.
Yes.
I'm flawed and I'm great.
I'm flawed and I'm great. Oh my gosh, I could just wrap my arms around you and hug you right now. Yes, I'm flawed and I'm great. And I can hold both of those things at the same time in my life, the both and. Yes, yes, yes.
Michelle, can you, as we're wrapping up, I really want to ask this question also. What are your thoughts about like DNA testing and, trying to find your biological parent, across the world, wherever they are?
I think DNA testing has become a powerful source of reconnection. And I think many adoptees are going that route. Sometimes it's simply they want to discover more about their ancestry, and then through the DNA testing, they discover a close biological relative. I think when you are looking at DNA testing, I think you just need to know your why. Why am I stepping into this? Why do I want to go on this journey of DNA testing? And then understand that there may be people out there who you are closely connected to biologically who may emerge. But do the work first of setting up a support system for yourself if that should happen. Do the work of coming home to yourself before you take the DNA test, or certainly while you're awaiting results. Journal on what you hope for. Really work to connect with yourself while you await your DNA test results. And those things may come quickly. I've had, adoptee coaching clients who have taken a test, and before you know it, they are in contact with a close biological relative, perhaps even a bio mother or father. I've had others where it's taken much longer to reach those kind of connections. But I just say, have a support system, know your why, and do the beautiful work of really connecting to yourself, knowing yourself more deeply and completely, and just loving yourself, being kind to yourself, self-care through it all. But it's a powerful tool, one that we, of course, didn't have for many decades, and now we have it. And it is bringing families together and shifting what we see our family tapestry as looking like in many instances very, very quickly. And I would say that it has been so healing for many of my clients who have said, I was always told maybe I was biracial, maybe white and Hispanic, but I never felt like that was right. They get their, results, and perhaps they're white and, and they find out they're, Polynesian or something else emerges, and they're like, oh, I've been drawn to that culture all of my life, and now I understand why. So it gives adoptees a beautiful sense of clarity and reconnection to the very identity, biology of who they are. And I think ultimately that's a beautiful thing.
I know, I've been very surprised when I got mine. And
Yes.
and I do think that it's interesting because I've heard, I've been with clients who has created drama in the sessions and the whole family system, and yet brought up a lot of authentic conversations, which were, back in the closet for so many years. And suddenly all of these stuff had to come out of the closet and be, transposed and transparent. And it brought a lot of closeness and healing for people. So everyone, let us be greater. A gentle, guided path to healing for adoptees by Michelle Madrid. Michelle, anything we have not touched upon that you really want everybody to know?
The thing that comes up for me in this moment, and I'm just going to go with it, is for everyone to really take in this moment that change begins within. That when we do the work of inner change, when we begin to cultivate our beautiful inner garden and we nourish it and we give it all the goodness and all the love and all the healing it deserves, the external world will respond to that. There's an energy that is carried from the inside out. And so if there are 3 words I would leave you with, and I would love everyone just to take and wrap so deeply into their heart, is change begins within. Do that inner work. Go there. Don't be afraid, because the gifts and the treasures that await you are countless. They're without boundaries. And so I offer that up today.
Beautiful. How could people find you?
Oh, please come see me. My website, themichellemadrid.com, or I would love to connect on Instagram. You'll find me there at @themichellemadrid.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
I am so honored. This is such a lovely, meaningful conversation. Thank you.
Beautiful. And for all of you who are out there, create an amazing life for yourself and everyone around you. And until next week, bye-bye.
Break free from the forces holding you back. Get the life you deserve. Eliminate stress, reduce anxiety, decrease depression, and start living your full potential. Thousands have used Dr. Foojan Zeine's awareness integration theory, an evidence-based behavioral health breakthrough with incredible life-changing results. Getting rid of past trauma, having fulfilling relationships, increasing earnings, and living their best life. Now, the Foojan app is available to everyone. The app is Dr. Foojan Zeine's awareness integration theory in the palm of your hand. Download Download the Foojan app today.